Welcome back to some Switch Sports Golf action. This is tournament style play and a 1v1. So we're playing best of three in a sense, but not exactly. So the games can end in a draw, and if it does end in a draw, we just move on to the next game, and if one of us wins two in a row, we're done at that point. But if we get to game three and finish game three, whoever is winning at that point is the winner, and if we are tied, we go into a tournament championship sudden death. So we go to a playoff if it's 3 draws or 1 win each and a draw. This is all run in the Switch Sports Golf Discord. What's on the line here is a spot in the Masters. So there are 1,600 members total. Total golfers is closing in on 1,600 in the Discord. And Tricky and I are ranked 16 and 17. So I'm fairly new, but that's where we finished in the last season rankings. So this should be a very even matchup. We finished right next to each other in the rankings, and we're playing this best of 3 for that Masters spot that has opened up. And on the opening hole here, we have hole 14. I went for that little shortcut through the trees with about 3.8 dots of power on the driver. I do clip the tree, but I get safely through. We're on the fairway with a nice looking shot to get to the green in 2 from 159 yards on this par 5. So that power feels pretty good. I'm hoping to land that just short and bounce it up. And oh, will Albatross, the opening hole of this 1v1 play-in game. So that's the best start you can have, with 4 miles an hour too on the wind. Albatrosses are hard to come by in general, but to do it with wind, we'll take a -3 to -2 lead. So Tricky does indeed eagle the first, but I albatross and take that 1-stroke lead. So we'll move on to hole 15 for our second hole of this first game. Once again, 4 mile an hour winds. This is the same conditions that you see as in the ranked games or in the play locally mode, where the amount of wind you can have depends on the hole you're on. So in the middle of the 9, which hole 15 is in the middle of the back 9, you can see up to 22 miles an hour. We only see 4 here, so once again, kind of a scoring opportunity, and I think we'll both be able to put this one pretty close through the light wind. So just a standard drive out to the middle of the fairway. And I'll take the 7-iron here and just give it some backspin, similar to what I did on the first hole. Actually, a very similar looking shot. We see that Tricky has a good looking line. And I like my shot as well. I'm thinking that should be pretty good, depends on the backspin, and we'll just yank the backspin a little bit too much, and you can see Tricky almost evened the game right away with an eagle, ended up less than a foot away, and we'll tap in the birdie. And I'll have to line up a slightly harder birdie putt here. It'll be 18 feet, definitely moving from left to right, not significantly. This is not one of the harder greens in this game, and I will birdie it. So no movement on the leaderboard after the second hole there. It'll be 4 under to 3 under, and we'll move on to the third hole of this first game. So once again, some light wind on a hole that could have some harder wind. I'm going to try to hit this one about 3.5 dots of power. The goal here is to land this just left of the pin. Let it bounce with some backspin, and it should have a run because the green will push it from left to right once it lands and spins. Oh, and I airmail my shot. So I used the wrong club. I hit the shot that I wanted, but instead of having the 5-iron in hand, like I intended to, I had the 3-iron. So just a mental error, and something that can happen in this game. I mean, Not to say that there's an excuse for that. I mean, that's really just a bad miss. But that has happened actually twice this week in other tournament play from some top players. So a tough look on hole 8 here. And I'll have to tap that down. I end up on the back island. So that's my par approach. We can see that Tricky has already birdied this hole. And I'll have to tap in for a bogey. So after albatrossing the opening hole to go 3 under through 1, I bogey the third, and now I give more than the one-shot lead back. Tricky now takes the lead, 4 under to 3 under through 3. And we'll now have hole 2 with that middle, but more so realistically front right pin. It plays on the downslope, so it is kind of like the front of the green. Most of the bowl of the green is kind of skewed towards the back. So we call that the front right pin. This will be definitely a 5-iron play with some backspin because we're hitting into the part of the green that slopes from front to back. I hit a fairly good shot there, but in the 11-mile-an-hour winds, it's kind of a guess as to, giving it a run for a hole-in-one. So I hit it pretty close, about 5 feet or so. Tricky hits a good shot as well. We should both have pretty straightforward birdies here. And I will sink mine, and Tricky will sink his as well. So no movement on the leaderboard after I albatross the first and then give it right back with a wrong club to the water on our third hole. Tricky holds that one-shot lead through 5. Or excuse me, through 4. We'll have a tougher looking hole 16 here. With that wind pushing from left to right, the shortcut's kind of out of play. The shortcut through the trees, heading towards the green on the right side. So we'll both likely have to... It's not necessarily a layup, it's the way the hole is laid out, but we'll have to go for this left fairway. And I've left myself a nice gap through those trees, intentionally with the power on the driver. I did push it maybe a little bit too far in terms of distance, and now my shot that is now sideways into the green, so a very strong dogleg right, is kind of hugging that left tree. But fortunately, with that wind, it doesn't make too much of a difference. Oh, and my shot with that little bit of downwind aspect to that wind. So it was mostly crosswind, but also a little bit downwind. This green often bounces and then glides to a stop, and I did not take that into account, especially on the back of the screen. So I end up on the fringe, and I'll have a much tougher putt for birdie, but I will sink it. So once again, no movement after the 5th hole. We both birdie that one. And Tricky leads 6 under to 5 under through 5. And we'll now play hole 9 with very little wind, 2 miles an hour. Although it is tailwind, it's not enough to allow us to get there in 2. If it was maybe 6 miles an hour, that's usually the threshold of when you can start going for the short bunker to at least get down to the far side of the water in 2. But in this case, we'll have to safely lay up short of the water. With that right pin, you want to line up the approach shot correctly. You don't want to be hitting sideways into that part of the green, because the green slopes very strongly from back to front there. So I'm going to try to leave this one with as straight on of an approach shot as I can. I'll get it down to the end of the fairway, and that's a pretty decent spot. So I'll just slap a driver underneath those trees with plenty of space to not catch any leaves. And here I should be able to maybe use some light backspin to try to just hold the spot where it lands. I don't want to yank it all the way back down this green because it does slope very strongly. So I'll pump fake a shot there. I accidentally release the button that you hold to hit the shot. And yeah, just a light backspin to bring it down a little bit. And that's a pretty good lead. That'll be not too bad of an uphill putt. It didn't go all the way down the green, and it gave it a run by, so I gave it a shot at trying to pick up that stroke back and just miss it maybe a foot to the right. But fortunately, I leave myself a very nice looking putt here. And Tricky chips in for a birdie. So Tricky ended up off the green and ended up saving the birdie, so a great shot there to maintain that one-shot lead. No movement again for the 3rd hole in a row. We both birdie, and we move on to hole 7 of our first game, and we see 0 wind on hole 19. So a difficult hole. The special holes are always the more difficult ones, but with 0 wind, they're a little more doable. However, we do have that back pin. The back middle pin, in my opinion, may be the hardest in this game. It's on such a strong slope. But we'll worry about that when we get there. I'll just hit a 3-iron, short of everything. You don't want to get yourself in trouble on the opening shot here. And that'll give me an opportunity to hopefully put it pretty close and at least hit the green in 2. So I don't have any wind to deal with. I can line this one up exactly where I want to put it. And the goal here for me is to try to clip that front right mound, because this shot's going to be coming in with a low trajectory. This is an uphill shot into a very uphill part of the green, and I'm hoping with the spoon it'll go in like a laser, but kind of bounce left off that mound. And we do get the bounce, but not as far left as I was hoping for, and we'll end up with a tough putt. 14 feet, but like I said, this pin is on an extremely, extremely slopey part of the green. So I'll have to hit this one pretty much sideways and hope it rolls down there, and the slope is just a little too much. A combination of not enough adjustment and not enough power. And I'll end up with another 14-foot putt, however, much straighter up that hill. We'll have to see what Tricky does here. Oh, and a roll in for birdie. So Tricky putts from off my screen. I'll sink a par. So a nice birdie for Tricky on a very tough pin to take a 2-shot lead in this first game. So -8 to -6. I'm not playing my best here. Obviously, I had that mental error with the wrong club on hole 8. And I miss a putt, albeit a tougher putt on that last hole. But I'm now chasing 2 strokes with 2 holes to play. So not looking good in my first game here. Fortunately, we do play at least one more, and I'll have a chance. And obviously, I'll have a chance to do something special on the next 2. My shot there, I was going for a little mound in the front of the green for my first bounce that would kick it to the right a little bit more. I don't get it, but we'll end up with a very straightforward birdie putt. Tricky rolls it up very close, closer than my approach. A good run at a hole-in-one, so he'll tap in for birdie as well. So no movement on the leaderboard. We'll both birdie, and we'll head into the 9th hole with Tricky holding on to a 2-shot lead. So things are boding pretty poorly for me in this first game, pretty well for Tricky. If he doesn't make any mistakes, he should have this first game pretty much in the bag. We'll have hole 18 with some very light wind. I leave my drive about a pixel short, but it's not going to make a difference with that light of wind in the face. And it looks like Tricky hits a nice shot as well. So this left island, as long as we both don't make any major errors, we should be able to kind of close this game out. I'll do the best I can to hole this one out. Adjusting slightly right, I think, is the move here. I'm not sure what the green is going to do, if it'll bounce pretty straight, or if I'll catch some of that upper tier of this 18th hole and it'll kick right a little. So I aim left, just a little bit. Kind of hoping to maybe clip that roll. And I get a pretty good line. And if I hit that a little bit harder, I would have clipped that 3rd shelf of the green and maybe had a chance to roll it out, but I just leave it about 10 feet short, maybe a little bit more. And Tricky hits a good shot as well. So with the 2-shot lead, this game looks pretty much over. I'll sink my eagle. That was about the best I could do. And Tricky will sink an eagle as well. So even if I hold out my shot, that wouldn't have been enough, and Tricky takes game 1 of this 3-game set. So I now need to at least draw in this next game to keep it going. If I lose, it's over. So I'll need to draw or win in order to stay alive in this qualifier tournament. We'll start with hole 1 in game 2 with some 6-mile-an-hour tailwinds. Once we get up there, that should be pretty much straight up tailwind. We have that middle right pin, which is not the most straightforward of pins. It does slope a bit right on the green up there, so it will definitely take some adjustment on this next shot. And the wind is pushing us a little bit to the left anyway. So I actually leave this pretty much dead aim, because I think the wind will push me slightly left, and the green will slope slightly right. I'm hoping they kind of just cancel each other out. I do end up adjusting a tick to the right, thinking that the wind might overpower the slope a little bit. And Tricky holes it out. So an eagle for Tricky on this first hole of game 2, and I leave mine to less than a foot, 0.7 feet. It wasn't on the exact line, and it was very slightly short, but a very close approach for me. So I now have to tap in for birdie. And because of a great shot by Tricky, through some wind, hole 1, especially with that pin and any sort of wind, is a great shot to hold that one out. So Tricky takes a one-shot lead with an eagle in game 2. We now have hole 17 with some 9-mile-an-hour tailwinds. This is one that I'm thinking I could use a spoon and get up there, but the spoon likely only gets me to the front of the green. So I end up using the driver, which is always riskier because you can launch over the back of the green. Tricky will hit the driver as well. And I'm just hoping that I get a good bounce. So I want to leave it shorter, if anything. And just hope. It looks like Tricky, you can see, launches over the back of the green. I do end up launching, but I land low enough that the upslope of the fairway, short of the green, takes off a lot of the speed. So I end up in a great spot. Tricky's off the green here, chipping. And he'll lip out the chip. So I now have a chance to even this game right back up. So similar to the first game, just in the opposite direction, Tricky takes an early one-shot lead on a great hole out, and then, maybe less so because of bad play and more so because of unfortunate luck, gives it right back after launching off the back of the green on 17 and lipping out the chip in. So we're even through 2 in this second game, and we once again play hole 14. I'm thinking here that I can send it all the way past the trees, although it's a little risky to go all the way to the right. So I'm going to adjust back to the left and go for that same shortcut that I had some good success on in the first game. I mean, an albatross is the best you can do. So I'm going to send it out through those trees again. Never a bad idea to play it safe and avoid the water. And I'll hit a very similar looking shot and just once again clip that tree, but it's not too much of an issue, especially with that tailwind, and we'll push it out to the middle of the fairway. So this will be a 3-iron in this time, and some crosswind as opposed to some very light headwind. So it'll be a different play, a different pin. I think I hit a pretty good shot there, and I should end up with that backspin. Oh, the backspin ends up launching me almost off the back of the green. I have 23 feet to go, and Tricky, it looks like, lipped out the albatross. So Tricky ends up with a good putt. I now have a side hill putt. And I just leave it on the left edge, just a little bit too low. Not quite enough power. Although the power looked pretty good, it was probably more so on the adjustment there. Tricky does make the eagle, and I now have to tap in for birdie. So a lot of movement on the leaderboard in the opening couple holes of this second game. We each move in each of the first 3 holes. So Tricky takes the opening hole, I take the second hole, and Tricky takes the third hole to take back that one-shot lead. And we now have once again hole 2, so a lot of duplicates in this match. Once again with that front right pin. Less wind this time though, so a little bit more doable in terms of giving this one a run. I think I hit a pretty good shot there. I will end up just a little bit short though. Bouncing on the rough kind of makes it completely random. The bounce on the rough is just kind of unpredictable. Tricky hits a good shot but just ends up on the wrong side of the pin. So that little bit of wind was enough to throw off each of our shots just slightly. And we'll both have to tap in for birdie. After having one of us do better than the other on each of the first 3 holes, we finally tie a hole. And through hole 4, Tricky maintains that one-shot lead. 5 under to 4 under through 4 is the scoreboard, and we'll move on to our 5th hole, which is a special hole, hole 21. With a good amount of tailwind that'll also push us a little bit to the left. I want to aim at that bunker over to the right and hope that the wind helps me clear. Okay, we're going to end up getting pushed a little more left than I thought. There's a lot of downhill to this, and I will end up in that bunker, which isn't the end of the world. It just makes this approach shot a lot touchier and a lot trickier, because we'll have to use the 3-iron. Fortunately, we have some helping wind to get to that back pin. But this is going to be a very risky shot, one that's easy to curve, easy to overpower, because we can only use up to 2 dots on the power meter. And that one feels pretty good, and it's on a great line. Oh, and we'll hit the pin and end up over the top of the green? 11 yards to go after hitting the pin on 1 bounce. So there's an unfortunate aspect to this game, and Tricky almost holes out the shot. There's an unfortunate aspect to this game where if you hit the pin, it takes away your backspin. So I hit the pin and my shot just rolls all the way off the green because it was coming in at such a low trajectory. So I now have to chip this and try to give it a run down that hill, and it's on a great line and just burns the right edge. So some very, very unfortunate luck in the early going of this second game for me. And as I said, I need to draw or win this one just to keep this match going. So Tricky birdies that hole to take a 2-shot lead in this second game, already maintaining the 1-game lead, and I'm now in trouble. So we'll have hole 3 with 11-mile-an-hour crosswind from right to left, and oh, on that power meter, it kind of got stuck. The Joy-Con does that sometimes. It's usually pretty precise. This game is usually, pretty good. But sometimes the power meter looks like it gets stuck. And not to be dramatic, but it kind of feels like when someone talks in your backswing. It throws you off, and I don't release the button that makes you swing, and I just end up red barring it all the way to the right. Fortunately, I don't end up out of bounds, and I'm able to recover and put it back in the fairway, but I'll have a very long third shot with some tough wind, and Tricky will very likely have an easier shot. And this is kind of a tough pin to get to from a distance. Yeah, there's Tricky's shot. So he'll have a much closer approach on this third one. I'm already down 2 shots, so I was hoping to maybe pick up a shot. The third hole is sometimes eagleable if you get lucky and play it right. But now I'm just trying to put it close. I give it a pretty good run, but I'll end up just left of the hole, and I'll have to tap it back up that green from 16 feet. Not a lot of break to it, fortunately. So I should be able to sink this birdie, but Tricky now has a shot to take a 3-stroke lead. It'll be difficult on this pin and this wind. So I'll take my birdie, and I'll now have to see what Tricky does. So Tricky ends up just left of the pin. I rolled mine out, but Tricky gets it pretty close and taps in for birdie. So no movement after the 6th hole. We both birdie after I very nearly put that one out of bounds on kind of a weird situation. And we'll move on to our 7th hole. So we're playing hole 4 with some left to right wind, some pretty light left to right wind. I'm going to use the 3-iron here and try to bounce this one just short of the pin. If you end up bouncing it short and hugging the right side of the pin, you have a chance to hole it out. And I'll have the distance wrong. The adjustment was about right, but the distance is just off, and I'll end up 5 feet to the right of the pin. Tricky gives it a good run once again, a couple of good runs at these last few holes, but ends up just about a foot to the right. So I'll have to tap in for birdie, and Tricky will have a very easy birdie putt as well. And with that 2-stroke lead, we'll head in to the 8th hole of this second game, and I'm facing elimination if I can't pull something off in these next 2 holes. So -8 to -6 is the score after 7. And we'll once again have hole 19 with 0 wind. So almost a replay, except we'll have a different pin. We have that front left pin that isn't necessarily any easier than the back middle. I mean, there's no pin on this green that's really easy. Maybe there's 1 or 2, but we'll see another one of the difficult ones. Because this pin in that front left is on the far side of a very small but very steep mound. So you have to hit it over the mound in order to put it close. This is once again a very uphill shot. Maybe a little deceivingly uphill. It doesn't look like it's that way. but you do have to hit this one pretty hard. So I'm going to send this one in with some backspin to try to put it close. It feels pretty good, maybe a little bit short. I'll end up hitting the rough and holing it out. On a very tough pin, I hole it out for an eagle. So I adjusted slightly right, and that helped me with the little kick to the left that the rough gives you. And I'll make it so a very clutch shot, a lucky shot, but a very clutch shot, and tricky, ends up in the back of the green. So he'll have a tougher birdie putt here, a long birdie putt, and I'm already in for eagle. So this game that was looking very settled is now once again kind of anyone's game. We'll see if Tricky can hold this one out. Tricky's a great player and a great putter. And that'll just burn the left edge. So that was a very uphill putt, and he had to hit that one really hard. And now we'll have another tough putt because that pin is on such a steep mound. So this is to save par here, and he will. So Tricky saves the par, but with my eagle, I even it right back up after the 8th hole. So I now have a chance to stay alive. I can steal this game if I win the next hole. But as long as I keep it even, I can force that game 3. So we'll have hole 5 here with some wind from left to right and a little bit of headwind. So I'll take some power off this one just to make sure I don't go through this fairway and end up in the rough. It actually would not have been an issue. So I could have hit that full power. And Tricky will be a little bit further up than me because I hit the rough. But I'll end up safely in the fairway. That's really all I was going for. And we have that tougher pin in the back right. So I'll hit a full driver off the deck to put it as close as I can. I definitely want to make sure I end up in the fairway. Tricky hits a good shot as well. So we'll both have an approach here to a tougher pin. But if one of us makes this, that's the game, most likely, unless we both make it. So we'll both have a shot. I want to adjust left for the wind and for the bounce. And I'm thinking I'll maybe try to give this one some very light backspin, just because this green can maybe give you a chance on the way back. So I definitely don't want to spin it all the way back down the hill. And I'll accidentally pump fake a couple times, releasing the button when I didn't quite mean to. And I actually end up leaving mine a little short. But fortunately, I put some very light backspin on it. And I'll end up with what looks like a very makeable putt, just kind of straight up the hill. And Tricky does not make the eagle. So a good approach, but Tricky will tap in for birdie. And I now have this putt to force game 3. So we draw game 2, and we end this game in a draw. We don't move on to a closest to pin or a sudden death playoff situation to decide game 2. Game 2 is just a draw, so it's now 1 game Tricky and 1 draw heading into game 3. So now I need to win. This is an absolute must-win situation for me in this game 3. I can't outright win it, but I can win the game to force the sudden death playoff. Really the championship playoff, the matchup playoff. We'll have hole 10 here with some 6-mile-an-hour winds, pretty much pure-ish tailwind, although this will push us a little bit to the left. And we have that tougher back pin on this green that's really guarded by the slope, as you can see on the mini-map. That's really the only part of this green that slopes somewhat significantly. So this is a very touchy shot to a pin that doesn't have a whole lot of room behind it, so it must be played pretty carefully. And I hit a pretty good approach there and just end up maybe a foot wide. So I handle the wind pretty well, I handle the slope pretty well, I don't put it over the back of the green, which is always a risk with this pin. And we'll have a pretty straightforward birdie putt. So for the first time in any of these games, we are even after 1. Neither of us hole out the first hole, both birdie. And we'll both take 1 under through 1 and move on to hole 2 of this game 3. We'll have hole 12 here with some 6-mile-an-hour winds, somewhat in the face, somewhat pushing us right to left. In this local play mode, or the local wins, the match, the play locally or play with friend wins, you don't see anything stronger than 11 miles an hour on this hole. So you can always go for that island, which we both do. And in this case, I want to land this one short on the fairway, but that part of the fairway kicks pretty significantly to the right. Once you get really off the left edge of that green, so the middle and the right edge of that green, short of it on that fairway, kicks pretty far to the right. So I under adjust for wind, hoping, okay, I'll end up hitting this one too far anyway, so I'll hit the green first, and I'll end up with an okay putt, but just pretty far to the left because I meant to hit the fairway first. So a little too much power ends up giving me about a 15-foot putt here. But not too much to this one, and I should be able to hit this one in for birdie, or for an eagle, excuse me. Tricky ends up short and misses the chip. So I'll now take at least a one-stroke lead. Tricky has this for birdie in this third game that I must win. So Tricky will tap in, and I'll take a one-shot lead. So I eagle that one, Tricky birdies, and I am now leading 3 under to 2 under through 2 in this must-win situation, third game for me. We'll have the fourth hole here as our third hole in this matchup, and a pin that's somewhat accessible. So I'll use the spoon. We have some very light winds, and the goal of the spoon is to roll it up there nicely. Tricky shot, looks like it's on a good line. So you want to try to land this one just a bit left. I'm not too sure about the adjustment that's needed here, so I kind of guess. And it looks like Tricky ends up real close, and it looks like maybe already taps in for birdie. And I will hit that one just too far. So I'll have a 6-yard, so roughly 18-foot putt here from the fringe. That's going to move a little from left to right. So I go for what is really a hole-out strategy, and I just lip in that putt inside the right edge. So I save a birdie. Tricky, it looks like, taps in for birdie. And I maintain a one-shot lead through 3. -4 to -3. We'll have hole 6 here with a back right pin. So as far as this hole goes, not too difficult. I can just send a drive out there with almost full power, and I should be able to get pretty far down that fairway, and we'll have a little gap through those trees straight ahead with some pretty much pure tailwind, or excuse me, pure headwind at this back pin. So the back pin you don't want to overshoot because it's very easy to end up in the rough. This green slopes very strongly from front to back, so the kick pushes you really far back. So the goal here is to try to put it close, but be real careful about going too far. So I'll hit it with about 3.5 dots of power, and with that headwind, that's just not enough. So I'm going to end up short. I spin it back, and I'll have 24 feet to go. Oh, and Tricky's shot hits the pin, and fortunately ends up in a pretty makeable situation. So that pin hit is often just very unlucky. I mean, there's no way to put it that close intentionally. I will sink a very, very nice side hill putt from 25 feet. Tricky will tap in for birdie straight down that hill, and I'll maintain that lead. So a weird fourth hole for us. Tricky hits the pin, ends up kind of unlucky, but gets a fortunate bounce for the birdie, and I'll have to sink a 25-foot sideways putt, and I do. So we'll have hole 5 again, I believe, for the third time in 3 games. And I'll put this one well left of that tree. There's no need to be too close to that tree, especially with this crosswind. You can't get there in 2, so I play this one super safe. And I'll just adjust to the right and put this one in the middle of the fairway. Anywhere really works here. So I'll just be as close as I can. This is a pretty approachable pin, but with that crosswind, it's just difficult. And I'll have about maybe a 50-yard shot at it. A 43-yard shot at it. So the wind's going to push it from right to left. The green's going to push it back a little bit, left to right. So I don't want to over-adjust. And I can give this one a run, I think. So I will leave it, it looks like just a little bit short. And Tricky will hole it out. So Tricky ends up to the right of me on the approach. And we hit our approach shots to the green at the exact same time. And I see Tricky's roll in, and I put mine to about a foot. So Tricky eagles the 5th hole through some 15-mile-an-hour crosswinds to even this third game right back up after 5. We are both 6 under par. And we'll have a tough-looking hole 8 here. This one's giving me some flashbacks. I want to make sure I have the right club in hand this time. Fortunately, I know about what to do with this extremely strong tailwind, which is to hit this about 3 dots of power with some backspin. So I have had some experience with putting this shot close. It's just difficult and very touchy. So I do about what I want. I actually hit it a little shorter than I want. And I will get a weird bounce. Okay, so I get a weird bounce off of the fairway, and I'll end up pretty far back. So I underhit that one by about maybe 0.2 of a dot of power. Tricky gives it a great run. Ends up just right of the hole from the tee box. And I'll have an okay putt here. I mean, I end up here fairly frequently with this pin. This one should move just a little right to left, and I'll sink it, no issues. Tricky has a tricky putt as well, and he'll sink his. So we both birdie a tougher 8th hole in 2 different ways. I mishit mine. Tricky gives it a good run and ends up just short. But we'll both birdie, and we'll both be 7 under through 6, and we'll have another special hole here with 0 wind. So these special holes can be really difficult. You can see up to the maximum wind, 33 miles an hour. But for the 3rd time at least in my memory, we'll have a 0 wind special hole. So I'll hit my drive straight out there. This pin is not really guarded by that tree or the bunker, so I don't really have to worry about either. And I can just hit a 3-iron in here and try to hit this one pretty close. I'm going to adjust a little to the left because I think this should kick right off that little ridge. And since this is a little uphill, I'm going to hit it with some extra power. So about 3.5 dots is what I was going for, and that's what I'll get. I'll land just short. Oh, and the run back moves just right enough that I won't sink it. So I gave it a good run at one of the tougher pins and one of the more precise pins to hit. And I'll end up with a weird little side hill putt, but as far as this green goes, not too bad. I can hit this one pretty hard, take out a lot of the slope. And Tricky has a tougher putt as well. Kind of a double breaker. So I'll make mine up that little hill, and we'll see if Tricky can sink it. So a great line and a great putt from Tricky, and no movement after the 7th hole. So we have 2 holes to play, and like I've said a few times, I need to win this one. I must win. If we end in a draw, that's 2 draws to 1 game 1 for Tricky, and Tricky would move on. So we'll play hole 3 once again. A lot of duplicate holes here, but we haven't really seen the same conditions. We'll have 9 miles an hour in the face, so we'll just send that one out to the fairway. It's going to be tough to gain a shot here because this hole is not too hard to birdie, but pretty difficult to eagle when you have this wind. So since we're hitting to the pin that is guarded by the bunker and we have some wind in the face, there's no real need to hit that fade shot that sometimes works through those trees. We'll end up pretty short anyway. We'll have 42 yards. And we'll have a chance to try to hold this one out. I mean, this is one of the more straightforward shots in this game. Just aim it a bit left, give it some backspin, and the slope of the green should push it back to the right. And it looks like that's what we'll both try to do. So I'm going to try to land this one a little short of pin high and just give it a run. Oh, and the wind just pushes it a little bit further than I thought it would. So that was a shorter shot, and a lot of times those shorter shots don't get pushed as much by the wind. But we do see the 9-mile-an-hour wind push it pretty far. And Tricky gives it a great run and lips out about 90 degrees. That might have been the game if that fell. So Tricky will have to tap in for a birdie after I do the same. We'll both birdie, and we'll both be 9 under through 8, heading into the final hole of this game 3. And we'll see hole 11 with the front left pin and 9-mile-an-hour winds kind of in the face, but also pushing us a little bit to the left. So this is a tougher shot. And I have to really make this. This is a birdieable hole, and I kind of have to hold this to keep it going. So I'll hit that with about 3.3 dots of power, and it looks like it's on a great line. I'll land it just short. That hill should push it back to the right, and I'll make it. I make the hole-in-one on the final hole of Game 3 to break the tie, and it looks like Tricky's shot didn't hole out. If he made the hole-in-one, that would have been game. But I make the hole-in-one to force the playoff. So I win Game 3 with a hole-in-one on the last hole, and we will now go into a hole-by-hole playoff. So the next person, we'll play another random 9. That's how we do this. So we play another random 9, and the first person to beat the other at one of these holes wins outright. We'll play hole 5 again for the first hole of this sudden death playoff, and we'll see some tougher wind this time. So 20 miles an hour right in the face. I need to lock right back in. I was not expecting this game to go into a playoff. Unfortunately, with 20-mile-an-hour winds in that direction, you can kind of just hit it straight up, and you don't have to worry about the tree or the rough. And we can just send this one in there to the fairway. And I'm leaving this one left to try to take a lot of the sideways directionality out of the wind. This will just be a tougher approach. It'll still be a little bit crosswind, but mostly headwind. And I can use the 9-iron here to give this one a run. So the green should push this a little to the right. But with that wind pushing it slightly left, it may kind of even out. And that's kind of what I'm going for here. So I'll want to hit this one a bit above pin high in terms of power, because it's uphill and the wind is pushing it back. So about 0.2 dots past pin high felt pretty good. Oh, and we just won't get the roll out. Tricky hits a great approach as well. We both put it to about 3 or 4 feet. And it looks like we'll both tap in for birdie on this first elimination playoff hole. So we'll have to move on to a second hole to decide this matchup. We both birdie a tougher par 5 there with some tougher conditions. 20 miles an hour is the second to maximum wind you can see there. And now we'll have hole 17. So a very, very tough and, oftentimes a hole decided by luck. But we'll both have to play hole 17 and see if one of us can birdie and one of us can par. This is a very parable hole, and if you get lucky, it's often a very birdieable hole. And my shot's just veering a little more to the right than I thought it would. Tricky's on a great line and gets that launch off the rough. I will also launch that little low glide that you see. Kind of a glitch, but kind of also just a part of this game. And Tricky has a putt, while I have to chip. Now granted, Tricky doesn't have the easiest putt. That one's going to break quite a bit to the left, and it's quite downhill. And he'll go for it right away and sink it. So I now need to make this in order to keep this match going. This is a must-make chip. And I give it some of that phantom backspin, and it lips in. So through the backspin that I didn't really mean to put on it, I lip it in almost 360 degrees, and we move on to a third playoff hole. So a lucky birdie from me, and a clutch birdie, and a very, very locked-in type of birdie from Tricky, and we'll now have a third playoff hole. We'll see some very tough conditions here. 20 miles an hour pushing us from left to right and also a good amount of tailwind to it. And we have that front pin that's going to be hard to get to with this wind. Anything on the right is a little bit easier usually than anything on the left, especially the front left pin. But the front right pin with this wind is just going to be, I mean, just hard to get through, especially because the wind is pushing us from left to right. We have to be very precise through these trees. If you clip these trees, you don't end up on the green. And I'm thinking I'll use the 7-iron here to give this one a bit more loft. And I'm hoping that the wind pushes me just right enough to avoid that left tree and hopefully just catch the very front of that green. And I execute it very well, but I do hit the fringe. Hitting the fringe causes you, for whatever reason, to lose a lot of the backspin. So that could have been a very good shot. If I hit the rough or the green, that could have come back a lot further or landed a lot softer. But I'll have a little 14-foot side hill putt, and Tricky ends up with a very similar looking putt. I will make mine, and Tricky will make his. So we both birdie a tougher hole 6 on our third playoff hole, and we now need to move on to a fourth playoff hole. So neither of us can win any of the opening 3 holes of this sudden death playoff. We'll once again see some tougher conditions. So hole 8, always pretty tough in general. That's not necessarily one of the harder pins, although it is very precise. It's on a part of the green that slopes from front to back, which always makes it hard. Any shot that slopes from front to back is usually a bit more difficult, and we'll have some wind to deal with too. Tricky goes for the spoon, which is maybe the right play, but I just don't really know it. So I need to use the 3-iron with some backspin. So I'm hoping to take off a lot of the wind and not get too much backspin, and I'll put it real close. So I nearly hole out. Very luckily, on this 8th hole, I'll have a very straightforward putt for this pin. Now, granted, these side hill putts in this game from 10 feet or so, I mean, 10 feet's on the far edge of the ones that you can leave kind of short. Whew, and I won't have to worry about it. And I'll tap in for a birdie. So we both birdie a tougher hole 8 on our 4th playoff hole. So now we need to move on to a 5th playoff hole. So we're both 4 under on some tough conditions, and we'll have hole 12 here with the maximum wind you can see on hole 12. So I need to make sure I hit a very good drive here. A drive with anything less than full power might be in trouble. So I kind of take a shot, collect myself. You both end up hitting OB and having a little bit of launch roll. So anything less than full power likely would have ended up OB. But we both make it to that short edge of this island. Now I'll want to use the spoon here and put plenty of power on it to try to access this middle left pin. The fairway should bounce pretty straight. If I hit the green, that actually might be fine as well. So this should land pretty softly with this wind. And it does kick a little weirdly left. I hadn't really seen that left kick before on that fairway. And Tricky has a great approach. So fortunately, even though I'm a little further away, this isn't too bad of a putt. Mostly straight, just a little left to right. But with the right power, it shouldn't move too much. I can just aim inside the left edge. We will see Tricky tap in an eagle. And I should be able to do the same. So a dead center eagle from about 18 feet. And we'll both once again have the same score. And we'll have to move on to a 6th playoff hole. So we're both now 6 under through 5. And we're waiting for one of us to, at some point, do better than the other. We'll now play hole 10 with, once again, maximum wind for that hole. 11 miles an hour is the most you can see. So not too difficult of a hole, but with 11 mile an hour winds, a tougher one to hole out. And really, in order for us to end on this hole, one of us is going to have to hole out because it's a fairly straightforward birdie unless one of us, really plays it wrong. So I'm going to adjust fairly far out to the right because I think this should kick left off the green a little bit and the wind's going to be pushing it that way anyway. I'll hit it with a bit of extra power because we're hitting upwind and uphill. And it's just a little bit too much power. So maybe a bit less power would have given it a good run. But we'll have an easy birdie putt, and Tricky leaves it just a little short and a little left. So we had kind of opposite misses. I will tap in my birdie from just over that little mound, And it looks like Tricky birdies as well. So we both have the same score on a tougher hole 10 for either of us to really, take a lead on the other. So we'll now move on to a 7th playoff hole. And we have hole 18 here with a front pin, or one of the front pins, and 33 miles an hour maximum tailwind. So in order to make sure I don't go to the far rough of that left island, I need to take something off the drive, and that should end up pretty close to the edge of the rough, which it will. And Tricky does the same, so a good play from both of us to not hit full power drives and end up with a tougher second shot. We have a pin location that's pretty accessible from almost anywhere on the green. I mean, it gets easier when you're closer. But a pin location that can maybe, if you get lucky, be rolled up and in for an albatross. I think I hit mine pretty well. That's about the power that I want. I'll play it with some backspin, and I'll launch and lip out. So the backspin kind of gets canceled by the way that it lands. And I end up rolling just past the hole, and because it hit it at a high rate of speed, I mean, it was very unlikely to go in, but I hit the hole in 2. And that would have won it. An albatross to an eagle would have been quite a way to end that one. But we both make pretty straightforward eagles on what was a pretty short second shot for that hole. And we'll have to move on to an 8th playoff hole. So we'll have hole 4 here with 13 miles an hour of crosswind. Once again, not too hard of a hole to birdie, but a pretty hard hole to make a hole-in-one on when you have this kind of crosswind. So we'll both give it a good guess. I mean, maybe Tricky knows this better than I do in terms of how far you need to adjust. But that's about where I thought I needed to be. I will end up a little too far to the left. Tricky does as well. So Tricky ends up much closer, but my putt's not too bad, and we'll both have pretty makeable putts for birdies on the 8th playoff hole. I'll need to adjust just a little bit to the right. Tricky does indeed birdie. I will birdie as well, and we'll have to move on to the 9th hole of this random 9 with none of us doing better than the other. Neither of us can take a lead in this game through 8. So we're both 10 under. We both have good rounds going, and we'll have to move on to hole 9, where we'll see 29 mile an hour winds on hole 19. So finally in this game, maybe not finally, but we'll see a special hole that's playing like a special hole. I'll have to club up to the spoon here in order to put it to the spot where I want it. Tricky hits an iron. I imagine adjusting a bit more than I will, and it'll end up a little bit shorter. So I'll have a better second shot in here as long as I don't make it to the rough, and I won't. So I have the ideal spot here. I have a really ideal spot. I have a gap between the trees. That shorter tree on the right shouldn't be in play. The trees on the left shouldn't be in play either. And I can hit a 3-iron in here. That's not one of the harder pins on this green. But when you're dealing with extreme crosswind on a longer shot with a 3-iron, it's just, you have to be precise. It looks like Tricky's shot was on a pretty good line. We'll have to see where he ended up. I can clear that part of the tree with that 3-iron, and I hit the fringe once again. So hitting the fringe causes just weird bounces quite often, and Tricky has, a tough putt from that part of the green. So Tricky ended up a little shorter maybe than he wanted, and I'll have a chip. So 2 tougher looking shots at this tougher hole. Now my chip isn't the worst. This is not pushing me too far to the right, and I'm going to a green, or a part of the green, while Tricky lips in a birdie. So Tricky makes the putt through the side hill, lips it in, and now I need to make this. And I do. Oh, I just have the distance on it. If that had any sort of backspin like I did on that hole 17, that might not have made it, but I roll it there, and I make it, and we both make tough birdies on the 9th playoff hole, and we need to move on to a whole new 9 to decide this game. So we have to just keep on playing until one of us can do better than the other. So some clutch shots on the 9th hole of that first playoff game, and now we have a very nervy-looking shot here with 0 wind and one of the easier pins on this second hole. So this is a very precise play, but one that should roll down there if you do it right. I hit mine about how I want it to. You just aim right at it and hit it with about that much power, and that'll roll in. So I will get the hole-in-one on hole 2. Tricky's on a great line, and he will make it as well. So we both execute a very makeable hole-in-one on that second hole with that, dead aim pin and that 0 win situation. And we'll both be 2 under through 1. We both make a hole-in-one, and we move on to the second hole of our second playoff game, so our 11th hole overall, with neither of us being able to take a lead. Granted, we're both playing pretty well at this point. We've seen some conditions that are really tough to hole out shots, and we just both took advantage of one where it wasn't very difficult to hole out a shot. And we're making good birdies, so just a very well-played game from Tricky. And I'm kind of keeping up. I had to make 2 tougher chips, just to keep this thing going. And we'll now have a special hole, 21, with some tougher wind. It looks like Tricky shot's on a pretty good line. I hit mine about how I want to, but the wind's pushing it a little further than I thought it might. Tricky doesn't use backspin and ends up on a tough part of that green, and I end up on the fringe. So I don't have a very long putt, but putting from the fringe is always just weird, especially when you're dealing with slope like this. So my camera angle is pretty high up. I can't really tell what the slope looks like. And it does indeed move a bit to the left, and Tricky will sink his putt sideways through that bowl of a green, and we both birdie a tougher hole 21 to move on to the 3rd hole of our second playoff game, where once one of us does better than the other, this thing is over. And it's been that way for a while now. And we'll move on to hole 12 once again. So a hole that we've played a couple of times. But when you're playing random 9s, you often see duplicates because you have to play a little bit, 9 of the 21 holes each time. So we'll see hole 12 for, I believe, the 3rd time, maybe the 4th time. And we'll see some easier wind to deal with here. At least wind that I kind of have a good idea of what to do with. So I can use the 3-iron. I'll use the spoon to aim, and then I'll adjust back to the 3-iron. Because you can see more precisely where the aim is when you have a longer club in your hand. So I'll aim it to the left part of the green where I want it, club back down to the 3-iron. And I'll hit this one with some backspin, and Tricky ends up in the bunker, short. So I now have an opportunity here if I can put this one close, and that's exactly what I wanted in terms of power. So I'll hit that with some backspin, and I'll put it to just a couple of feet straight uphill. And Tricky holes it out from the bunker. That must have been about a 20 to 30 yard bunker shot to a tougher part of this green with the back pin, and Tricky holes it out to match my pretty much tap-in eagle, and we'll have to keep playing. I thought I may have had that win there. Now, granted, Tricky probably thought that he had some wins when I had to chip in from off the green a couple times in the first playoff 9. But now we'll have to move on to our 13th playoff hole after a clutch chip from Tricky. Wow. And we'll have a very difficult looking hole 18 here, so we'll have wind in the face that's going to force us to go to that right island that we haven't had to go to yet. This is going to be a tougher second shot. Tricky ends up in a very, very good spot. I'm just a little bit further right than I would like to be. You can see that I lost a pixel of power on that drive. Not that it would have made a huge difference. And now, I don't know if I can reach this in 2. And Tricky goes for it. Oh, Tricky's shot is on a great line if it gets there. And it looks like it does get there. So I'm just like a yard behind. And he's on the green. Tricky is on the green. I now don't have a choice. In this sudden death playoff, I now need to go for this. And I hit it about as well as I think I can. And I clip The rock. I clip the rock. Tricky's on the green with what looks like a tougher putt, maybe about 20 feet or so, and Tricky sinks it from just off of that first shelf of the green. And now, because I clipped the rock, Tricky must have just made it. Tricky must have clipped that short rough and rolled up there, and I clipped the rock and end up 25 yards short of this green. I have to chip in again for the game, and my shot just takes a bounce to the right off of that very precise. I mean, anywhere you hit on that mound, like the exact spot you hit is going to bounce it in some very different directions, and I miss it. Granted, a very tough chip through some tough wind. I'll finish out my birdie, and wow, what a match with Tricky. Like I said, we were very evenly matched with our rankings coming in, and wow, great games to Tricky. What a matchup. What a game.